They thought their Great Pyrenees had developed an unsettling fixation on their daughter's face. They were reading it completely backwards. Isadora Thackeray Monroe had raised Atlas since he was a clumsy, oversized puppy, and by the time he reached his full weight of well over 100 pounds, he'd settled into the calm, dignified temperament the breed was known for. Her daughter Perpetua, 2 years old, adored him. Then, roughly 2 weeks before Perpetua's most recent pediatric checkup, Atlas started doing something new. Every afternoon, around the same time, he would plant himself directly in front of her on the kitchen floor and simply stare at her face, unmoving, for long stretches at a time. It wasn't playful. It wasn't the soft-eyed gaze he usually gave the family. It was intent, fixed, close enough that his nose sat only a short distance from Perpetua's face while he held perfectly still, watching. Isadora's mother-in-law, visiting for the week, found it unsettling almost immediately. "That's not normal affection," she said, watching Atlas hold his position through an entire episode of Perpetua's favorite show. A dog that size staring at a toddler's face like that every single day at the same time. That's the kind of fixation that precedes something. You should have someone evaluate him. Isadora took the concern seriously enough to call their vet, describing the behavior in detail. The vet, without seeing it firsthand, suggested it could be an early sign of resource guarding tied to Perpetua's snack time, since the timing lined up loosely with her afternoon juice and crackers, and recommended keeping Atlas at a distance during that window going forward. For the next several days, Isadora redirected Atlas to another room during the afternoon stare-down window. He went without protest each time, but was back at Perpetua's side, staring, the very next afternoon, at almost exactly the same hour. That precision in timing would matter later. She didn't know that yet. The day before Perpetua's scheduled checkup, Isadora let her guard down and allowed Atlas to stay in the kitchen during the usual window, mostly because she was too busy prepping dinner to manage another redirection. She glanced over periodically, and on one of those glances, she noticed something she'd been too quick to look away from every other day. Perpetua's eyes, during the stare-down, kept drifting slightly to one side rather than meeting Atlas's gaze directly, and her head would tilt in a small, repeated motion that Isadora had never consciously registered before. She mentioned it to the pediatrician the next day almost as an afterthought, more focused on describing Atlas's odd behavior than anything about Perpetua herself. The pediatrician, Dr. Rutger Vanterpool, asked a few careful follow-up questions and then performed a brief vision screening on the spot, revealing an emerging issue with Perpetua's eye alignment and depth perception that was still too subtle to have shown up in casual observation, but was clear once specifically tested for. If you are the kind of person who eventually notices the small tilt of a head you've been glancing past for weeks, subscribe. This channel exists for exactly that instinct. Dr. Vanterpool mentioned, almost as an aside while explaining next steps, that dogs sometimes become intensely focused on a child's face during the early emergence of vision or eye alignment issues, holding a fixed position at a consistent distance as though trying to line up their own gaze with the child's shifting one. Isadora thought about the timing of it all differently after that appointment. The same hour every afternoon, not in association with snack time at all, but the specific window when the afternoon light through the kitchen window happened to be brightest, exactly when Perpetua's eyes seemed to struggle most with adjusting. The redirection that never stuck, not stubbornness, a dog returning to the one observation he apparently felt wasn't finished. The unsettling closeness itself, not a warning sign of aggression. An animal trying, in the only way available to him, to hold still long enough to study something he'd noticed shifting. Has your dog ever stared at your child in a way that turned out to mean something specific? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear it. Perpetua is now being monitored by a pediatric ophthalmologist with an early and manageable plan in place precisely because the issue was caught before it became harder to correct. Atlas's afternoon stare-downs have quietly stopped altogether, as though whatever question he'd been trying to answer had finally been resolved by someone else. If this story mattered to you, subscribe so the next one reaches you too. Isadora's mother-in-law brought up the fixation once more during a visit a few months later, still slightly wary of it. Isadora just smiled and told her the truth. Atlas hadn't been the one they needed to worry about. He'd been the one who noticed first.